Wasden and Secretary Denny remotely. On our Board of Examiners agenda today, there are 5 items on our consent agenda. We have the minutes from last month. And then item number 2 is from the Department of Administration. These are 2 lease assignments. Item number 3 is from the Department of Environmental Quality. It's 2 items. It's a request to transfer $3,453,981 to be transferred from the general fund to the Department of Environmental Quality Fund in the 4th quarter of fiscal year 21. And the second item is to transfer $350,267 to be transferred from the Public Water System Fund to the DEQ Fund in the 4th quarter. Our 4th item is from the Department of Health and Welfare. This is a request that was previously approved for overtime compensation for employees working in response to the COVID-19 virus. And this is to extend that to June 26th. The second additional item is to request 7 additional employees.
Make sure, would you please make sure you're on mute? We're getting some feedback.
Thank you, Governor. The second item from the Department of Health and Welfare is to request that we add 7 employees to their current list and that they, again, to receive overtime compensation while working on COVID-related work. This will be effective March 14th through June 26th of 2021. And the last item on our consent agenda is from the Idaho Brand Board. This is pursuant to Idaho Code Sections 59-1014, Paren 1, Paren C, and 67-2025. This is for an exemption for the daily deposit requirement and permission to deposit collections of cash, checks, and other evidence of indebtedness over $200. The Idaho Brand Board is seeking specific permission to deposit within a monthly basis, and the Brand Board would require in policy for those rural brand inspectors to continue to mail their paperwork and payments to the appropriate district office weekly. The Brand Board will bring this item back to the board annually for review to see if the exemption is still needed. And with that, Governor and members of the board, that is the consent agenda.
Governor.
General.
I move adoption and approval of consent agenda, and I apologize for the background noise.
I second.
Moved and seconded, we adopt the consent agenda. Any further debate? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the consent agenda has been adopted.
Governor and members of the board, we have one item on our regular agenda. This is from our State Treasurer, Julie Ellsworth, and we have her bond counsel, Stephanie Bonney, is here in person with us today, and I know our good State Treasurer is on Zoom. This is a request for authorization pursuant to Idaho Code 63-3201 to issue tax anticipation notes that will not exceed 75% of the anticipated income or revenue from taxes during fiscal year 2022.
Do we need a presentation?
I don't believe the only thing that we have, Governor and members of the board, we do have Stephanie Bonney is here, and she can speak to this if necessary.
Stephanie.
Yes, sir. Just as a reminder to everybody, of course, last year was one of the few years we haven't needed to do this. What the state does is there is a difference in cash flow. A lot of the revenues have to be paid out to the schools before we receive all of our taxes in. So the state treasurer usually issues a tax anticipation note to be able to anticipate that shortfall just in the timing of cash flows. As you may remember, we are limited to not only the 75% of income and revenue, but the IRS also limits the state to only borrowing 90% of the anticipated deficit. My understanding is that the note this year is anticipated to be around the same amount as it usually is, which is between 500 and 550 million.
And Stephanie, if I'm correct, this is not for this year because we've got a lot of the federal funds that are sitting around in your vault somewhere, and we're going to use that for cash flow this year, and this is for next year.
That is correct, sir.
Okay.
This year the state did not issue a tax anticipation note.
All right. Any questions? Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, sir.
Governor,
General,
I move approval of the tax anticipation notes as outlined by Controller Wolf.
Second.
moved and seconded that we adopt the regular agenda item on the tax anticipation notes for the discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the item has been adopted. Controller Wolf.
Governor and members of the board, we do have this. Normally we would sign that. We'll get the governor's and my signature today. I'll work with Attorney General Wasden and Secretary Denny to get their signatures as soon as possible. On our informational agenda, we just have a few items. We have update from our office, which lists all the overtime payments that were due to COVID from the different agencies. Item number 8 is outside employment for one of the deputy attorney generals in the attorney general's office. And our last item is the state insurance fund, and that concludes our agenda for today.
General,
Governor, move adjournment.
Second.
moved and seconded, we adjourn. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, we are adjourned. Thank you. You ready, Dustin? The State Board of Land Commissioners will come to order. Director Miller.
Governor, land board members, thank you.
There she is. Okay.
All right, everybody's here. Good morning. This is a regular meeting of the State Board of Land Commissioners for Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. Let's jump right into it. Tab 1, Attachment A in your binders is the department's recent timber sale transactions and activities. However, I want to start with a quick update on the delivered product sales pilot program, Governor. As you are aware, the in FY21 budget request and approval for the Department of Lands, the Idaho legislature approved a line item of $500,000 to establish a delivered product sales pilot program as a possible way to generate additional revenue through the timber program. The department attempted to fill the program specialist position for this pilot program in the fall of 2020. However, we were not successful. Coinciding with this was the implementation of the 2019 Forest Asset Management Plan, as well as a restructure of the Timber Management Bureau to better meet the needs of our customers. With the restructure, timber sales and contract administration will now be under one section chief. This position is currently being advertised, and the individual hired will have the responsibility of developing the pilot program, including the sales process, procedures, and contracts. We plan to sell our first delivered product sale in FY22. On to the February timber sales. During February of 2021, the Department of Land sold 4 endowment timber sales at auction. The endowment net sale value represents a 24% upbid over the advertised value. All sales had competitive bidding last month. We did end up selling the Hello Elk sale last month above the appraised value. As you can see, the low value of that sale, however, was the result of the dominance of ponderosa pine in that particular sale. The total endowment sawlog volume sold in February was more than 26.9 million board feet, which sold for nearly $9.3 million and an average selling price of $344.63 a thousand. So some really good stumpage prices last month. On to the next table, proposed timber sales for auction. These 2 sales actually recently sold. The department sold the Renfro conversion endowment timber sale out of the St. Joe area on March 11th. There was 3.2 million board feet of volume in this particular sale, which sold to Stimson Lumber for about $267 per thousand, resulting from a 32% upbid over the advertised value. Additionally, the department recently sold the Midas Touch G&A sale on the Nez Perce Clearwater National Forest. This G&A sale was upbid about 47% and sold to IFG for $365 per thousand, so also some good upbidding there. On to the bottom table, volume under contract as of February 28, 2021. The department currently has 168 active contracts. Total volume under contract is a little more than 564 million board feet. with an estimated residual value of more than $143.1 million. And you can see where you're tracking slightly ahead of the 3-year average in the right-hand column there, with the exception of the stumpage pricing. The next table on page 2 represents the department's timber sales harvest receipts so far to date this fiscal year, and that number is about $62.9 million. February stumpage and interest brought in about $9.3 million, while March is projected to bring in about $7.1 million. The next table is a status update of the FY 2021 timber sale program. The department has sold or has in process nearly 202.4 million board feet of sawlog volume, which represents about 71% of the total FY 21 sales volume. As you can see on the cedar pole column, the department continues to exceed our sale target for FY 21 at 105%. Onto the bottom graph on page 2 shows our cumulative harvest receipts. As you can see, with the recent increase in timber harvest, we have crossed into the lower range of what we can expect revenue to look like by the end of the fiscal year. Current fiscal year to date is about 113% of the 3-year average. Moving to page 3 and the top graph, cumulative harvest volume. Current fiscal year to date, we are at 123% of the 3-year average. The increase in harvest can be attributed to recent salvage sales and the harvesting of older timber sales. Over time, harvest volume will go up as we put more wood on the market pursuant to our forest asset management plan. The bottom graph on page 3 is the monthly lumber and stumpage price index. Again, the green line represents the market lumber price. The blue line represents the 6-month IDL rolling average for stumpage price. And the red line represents the IDL monthly stumpage price trend. As you know, stumpage prices vary based on the quality of the individual sale. As you can see, lumber prices are on the rise again, given strong demand in housing and remodeling, and the IDL stumpage price is beginning to tick upwards. Remember, there is that lag effect that we talk about often with stumpage pricing. Governor, you had asked what things would look like when you remove the salvage and pulp sales that can have an influence on our stumpage prices. And on page 4, you can see how we have broken things down between price per thousand in the left-hand column for all sales versus removing salvage and pulp wood sales reflected in the center column, and the delta between the two. And then, Governor, the map on page 4 just gives you an idea of our sold and proposed timber sales and where those sales will take place. So I will stop real quick, Governor, and ask if there are any questions on the timber report.
Questions? Go ahead.
All right, Governor, turning to page 1 of attachment B, endowment transactions. This is including leases and permits within the real estate division, within the trust land management division, I'm sorry. In February 2021, the department issued a total of 18 instruments, 10 of which were land use permits. Only one real estate transaction took place in the month of February, which was a deed granted for the Jerome surplus property, which was recently authorized by the land board last fall. And a quick update on land exchanges. The department is working with the Bureau of Land Management to close the Owyhee Land Exchange. The BLM recently completed the protest phase for the Owyhee Land Exchange, and I believe there were 4 protests to this particular exchange that the BLM is working to address currently. The department is also in the appraisal phase for the Avamore Land Exchange, and we are still in the procurement process phase for the contracting of certain due diligence items for the IFG, the Diatley, and the Eastern Idaho Solid Waste Land Exchanges. On to page 2, which is the monthly 2021 fiscal year to date gross revenue for leasing activities within the Trust Land Management Division. We are still tracking ahead of revenue projected or expected for this time of year. Total revenue with real estate services income included so far this fiscal year is nearly $4 million. And just a couple of things to point out, Governor. Looking at communication sites, there were 10 new leases completed this fiscal year that were not included in the forecast that was developed last June. So you can see the delta between the expected and actual receipts in that particular category. Additionally, regarding grazing leases, invoices go out to our grazing lessees in mid-March, and payments are due around the 1st of May. Most revenue comes in April and May, so outstanding invoices amount to nearly $1.9 million for grazing revenue. On to page 3, cumulative trust lands program receipts. This does not include timber. This graph shows how we compare against the 3-year average. While we are on track to meet our fiscal year-end goal, we still lag behind the 3-year average, largely given declines in residential and cottage site income, as well as a steady decline in grazing revenue. However, at nearly $4 million in income, we have exceeded our expected revenue so far this year by about, for this time, this fiscal year, by nearly $400,000. And on to page 4. This is the status of our permanent fund revenue and royalties from the sale of minerals such as sand and gravel, phosphates, and other minerals. The amount to date this fiscal year that has been deposited into the permanent fund is just over $1.4 million, roughly $300,000 ahead of where we were last month. Currently, there's another roughly $90,000 out on the sweep, ready to be transferred into the permanent fund within the next month or so. Governor and Land Board members, are there any questions? On this agenda item? Okay, Governor, quickly on to attachment C. This is a quick legislative update. IDL pending rules are omnibus fee rules. Both the House and Senate resource committees have approved these rule packages. And the budget, both the Endowment Fund Investment Board budgets was set, as well as IDL's budget was set. Currently, the IDL budget, the appropriation did pass the Senate 35-0, and it's currently on the House third reading calendar. IDL legislation, House Bill 23, Endowment Land. This repeals the existing law related to exchanges of certain lands. This particular legislation did pass the House as well as the Senate. House Bill 24, Idaho Board of Scaling Practices. This bill amends existing law to revise provisions regarding board compensation. And again, this legislation has passed both bodies, and Governor, both pieces of legislation are pending your action. There's one particular bill we will talk about later, which is House Bill 118. This concerns IDL's legal representation, and we will be discussing this a little later in the meeting. Governor, that concludes the department report, and I will stand for any additional questions.
Questions? Hearing none, is Chris zoomed in somewhere?
Governor, yes, I am. I'm here. Can you hear me?
There you are. Welcome, Mr.
Good.
Anton.
Good morning, Governor, members of the Land Board. Thank you, Director Miller. The Endowment Fund had a solid month. During February, the fund was up 2.3% for the month, which left us up 20.4% fiscal year to date. Through the close of the markets yesterday, we were up 23.2%. So we've continued to experience strong markets. In February, we saw COVID-19 infection rates recede, vaccination campaigns accelerate, and the approval of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. For those of you who watched President Biden's State of the Union address last week, he indicated that all Americans would be eligible to start receiving the vaccine in May. So the acceleration of the vaccine distribution has really created optimism and about the economy going forward and the recovery. The question that investors seem to be grappling with is what impact will the economic recovery have on inflation? Fed Chairman Jerome Powell has argued that we are on a path to reflate the economy at a healthy annual rate of around 2%. His focus has been to bring us back to full employment, and he's expressed a willingness to let inflation run a little above their target of 2%. However, he believes that increase above 2% would be transitory and that we would still keep inflation around 2%. Others, however, are concerned that when you combine another round of stimulus, the $1.9 trillion plan that was recently approved, with the increased savings rate that we've had during the period of COVID-19, that we could see an acceleration of inflation in the months ahead. And if that happens, the Fed could be forced to increase short-term interest rates, which could hurt growth in technology stocks. So we have seen interest rates tick up in recent months. About a year ago, the yield on the 10-year Treasury was 0.5%. Yesterday, it was 1.6%. So we've seen interest rates begin to move up over these inflation concerns. And that's made it tough to make much money in the fixed income. But overall, it's been a great period, a great run for the fund. Attached on the next page is a summary of where we're at in terms of our reserves. You can see that all the endowments are above their target reserve levels and extremely healthy at this point. In terms of actions by our board, based on your recommendation, Governor, our board did approve Tom Wilford as our chairman at our last meeting. And we have our next EFIB board meeting set for May 18th. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions? I like seeing all that green, Chris. You and
Thank
your
you.
board are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Further questions? Hearing none? Thank you.
Governor, on to the
Director.
consent agenda. Tab 3 in your binder is regarding the Timber License Plate Fund, and I believe Jennifer Okerlund is here to present today, so I will kick it over to Jennifer.
I am. Thank you, Director, Governor, members of the Land Board. My name is Jennifer Okerlund, and I'm the Director of the Idaho Forest Products Commission. Our request to you is for use of the Idaho Timber License Plate funding. We have worked collaboratively with the Idaho Department of Lands to come up with a list of recommended projects to fund. I believe that's in your book. The majority of the funding would go towards Project Learning Tree, which is an award-winning environmental education program that we work to make available to teachers and young Idahoans. So I guess with that, I would ask for any questions for the use of these funds. I would note that sales of timber plates have increased, which is a good thing and lends to sustainability of the fund. So.
Questions? Thank you, Jennifer. I guess the next item is the minutes. Is that correct? Yeah, that's a consent item, so.
Yes, sir. Approval of draft minutes, February 16th, 2021.
Governor,
Controller Wolf.
I move adoption and approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
The opposed, no opposed. The consent agenda has been adopted. With that, I guess Josh is going to make a presentation on the Ag College Endowment. Mr. Perkis, welcome.
Good morning, Governor, members of the Land Board. For the record, my name is Josh Perkis. I'm the Real Estate Services Program Manager at the Department of Lands. Joining us today remotely is the Land Board's Real Estate Advisor, Michael Finch from Century Pacific. And then we have a number of representatives from the University of Idaho, including Brent Olmsted, the Director for External and Government Relations, Kent Nelson, Legal Counsel, and Joe Stegner from the President's Office. Today, the department is seeking approval to offer for auction approximately 282 acres of agricultural college endowment land in Caldwell. This property came into endowment ownership through the federal in lieu land process via a clearlist deed in January 1908. It is split into two legal lots of 162 and 120 acres and is directly in the path of residential development. Currently, all 282 acres are encumbered with an easement from 1947 that allows only the University of Idaho to use the property for an experimental farm. It is critical that the easement is released or terminated prior to the marketing process because of the negative impacts to the value of the land. In 2016, the department met with the representatives from the University of Idaho seeking consideration for the disposition. The university informed the department that they had limited use for the agricultural college endowment land and prefer that it be sold. At that time, the University of Idaho owned an additional 40 acres adjacent to the property, which included a large veterinary training facility known as the Kane Center. After discussing a potential disposition plan with the university for the agricultural endowment land, it was concluded that it is in the best interest to wait until the university completed the disposition of the land they own adjacent to the property. It would help establish a good indication of market value, and it would simplify the approach to disposing of the endowment land. In 2020, the university completed the disposition process for the Kane Training Center and surrounding land, and has since re-engaged the department with a request to dispose. So upon receiving the request, the department commenced its review process to determine if a sale was in the best interest of the endowment. We contracted with a land use planner, an appraiser, an environmental engineer, and the land board's real estate advisor to review and make a recommendation. The recent appraisal completed by the Langston Group established a market value of $3,300,000 for the 120-acre portion and $2,436,000 for the 162-acre parcel. It's an aggregate market value of $5,726,000 or $20,306 per acre. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to the Land Board's real estate advisor, Mr. Finch from Century Pacific, to discuss his analysis and recommendation for the property. Once he's completed, I will present some additional information and open it up for questions.
Mr. Finch.
Governor, members of the Land Board, my name is Michael Finch. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. Mr. Perkis covered many of the highlights and characteristics of these two parcels. I would add that at present, the Caldwell area land assemblage is in unincorporated Canyon County. It is not within the city of Caldwell. It is currently zoned ag. However, we have discussed potential annexation with the city, and they would be open to that in the context of a land division. If it were to become part of the city, it would be R1, single family detached residential. And the land plan that we had the land group create for us represents the R1 zoning configuration of 821 lots. We have reviewed all of the information that IDL has put together on the property, including the appraisal, the land plan, all of the property encumbrances, as well as the market. And we recommend that the property be held for sale at public auction. I stand for questions.
Questions? Mr. Perkis.
Thank you, Governor. Members of the board, upon board approval, the department will contract with a real estate broker and auctioneer. We will compile a property information portal for due diligence to help with the marketing, work with the university to release the easement and market the property for at least 60 days. I anticipate that the sale will be held in mid to late summer. And again, the department is seeking approval to offer the Caldwell area assemblage property for sale at public auction at or above the appraised value in Ada or Canyon County upon the confirmation of the University of Idaho's relinquishment of the 1947 easement. And with that, I'll stand for questions. We have Michael Finch and the representatives from the University of Idaho who could also field questions.
Questions? I read that easement. That easement is specific, and it's, I guess that's how they wrote easements in 1947, but it is gone, so we don't need to spend any more time on that. Just ask the Board of Regents to release the easement. It is of little consequence. Controller Wolf.
Governor, and thank you, Mr. Perkis and Mr. Finch. One of the things I've, in the background reading and understanding of this, was some of the tie back to the Morrill Act and what the funds for this would be used for, can be used for. And I know, future ideas and thoughts the U of I has is with the cafe down in the Magic Valley. Do we have that all cleared? And is that future determination still?
Governor, Controller Wolf, members of the board, there are a number of ongoing legal questions in regards to the reinvestment of the proceeds from the sale. Both legal counsel from the department and the university are working together to resolve that. But at the current time, we don't need that answered. The funds will go into the land bank and we'll have 5 years to reinvest.
Thank you.
I've got a little history with this piece of ground. I proposed this in 2001 or 2, but that was before Cafe was a glimmer in the eye of the University of Idaho. And then, of course, I think Senator Craig, we worked on the Morrill Act to better defined, but the Morrill Act is specific. If it's a research facility for a research facility, there is no harm, no foul. In your text here, is there a disagreement between our attorneys and I see Mr. Nelson sitting on Hello Walk on campus? Is there a disagreement with that exchange of Morrill Act property for research property for research property?
Governor, members of the board, I don't know if there's a disagreement. I think they just have to come together and work through some of the issues with the funding.
Well, my research was that if you sell a piece of research property and build a student union building, that was where people got slapped down to using Morrill Act property. But if it's research for research, if anybody disagrees that that's a no-brainer, I guess I'd like to know.
Okay. Governor, members of the board, again, there's just ongoing questions that they need to answer.
I know Clive did a lot of work on this back in the old days, but I think we got that all cleared up. So, and of course, it is an issue of the timeliness. Do I understand the University of Idaho has an option on some ground down at Rupert?
Governor, members of the board, yes, that is correct.
So the timeliness of the exchange is, we missed the window of opportunity in 2003 or 4 to sell this property when it had a high value, and it's gone way down, and now it's gone way back up. You said Langston did the appraisal. What's the date of the appraisal? The update that we got from Mr. Fitch is that March of this month. When was the last time the appraisal was updated?
The Governor, members of the board, the effective date of the appraisal was December 1st, 2020.
Oh, well, I've already had some cash offers for it at that price, just so you know, so I think you're pretty safe.
Governor, that would be good for the public auction.
It will be good for the public auction, so.
Governor, I don't know if Mr. Nelson has any comments.
Kent, do you want to, it's got to be cold out there in the yard at the sub right now, or at the administration building.
Governor, members of the land board, just for a quick check, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect, okay. You are correct, it is a bit chilly, but it's by the only coffee bush that we have out on the lawn, so that works pretty well. So the university completely supports the sale of this property at this time. This is a market decision that is in the best interest of the endowment. It's in the best interest of the endowment beneficiary, the university. We are still in discussions with the Attorney General's staff on the specifics for how those proceeds can be applied and what benefit the university can gather from them in association with the cafe project. We do have an option on property adjacent to the current property that has been acquired for the cafe dairy, and we are actually seeking approval to commence bidding and construction at the upcoming board meeting in April. We will also be seeking approval to fully release the easement so that this property can be sold at its maximum value.
Thanks, Ken. Just one more question, Mr. Purkis. The next item on the agenda is going to be the discussion up in Valley County. I guess from a policy standpoint for the board, and of course this is different because it's Morrill Act ground, but if we think owning the land and leasing it out is a better deal than selling the land, how do we basically have some kind of a consistent policy for the board to consider?
Governor, members of the board, we have had some internal discussions regarding that, and I'm going to defer that question over to Mr. Finch. He could probably do a better job of answering that.
Governor, members of the land board, it's a good question. I know that commercial ground leasing has been explored elsewhere. Typically that works best when property is not of a residential nature. There are examples where ground leases are effective in a multifamily high-rise situation where they're not creating any new opportunities such as waterfront or downtown Honolulu. But as it relates to land that is zoned for single-family residential or for agricultural uses, because the highest and best use is transitioning from ag to single-family, it would be difficult to get real value out of this property on a ground lease structure for single-family developments.
All right. Further discussion. And this is a...
Regular agenda item, Governor.
Yep.
Governor.
Well, what do your advisors recommend, General?
They advise selling this property at its current value. So I make a motion that we direct the department to offer the Caldwell area property assemblage for sale at auction in Ada or Canyon County upon confirmation of the University of Idaho's relinquishment of the 1947 easement. And again, I apologize for the background noise.
Governor, I second that. And I don't know if his advisors are the other ones in the room with him or if they're some of his other workers.
Not that they're better than his dags, but or more coherent.
I second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the recommendation of the department on the sale of the Canyon County property. Further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Governor, on to tab 6 in your binder, which is the Pay It Endowment Land Strategy final approval. Jim Elbin, who is our Trust Lands Management Division Administrator, will present.
Welcome, Jim.
Good morning, Governor, members of the Land Board. For the record, my name is Jim Elbin, the Division Administrator for Trust Land Management. This morning, we will be discussing the approval of the Pay It Endowment Land Strategy, or PELS. At the Land Board meeting on June 16, 2020, the department was directed to prepare a plan for the management of endowment lands in the McCall area of Valley County. The department prepared and presented the first iteration of the PELS at the December 15, 2020 Land Board meeting. As part of the ongoing process of that meeting, the department provided time for public comment regarding the process and formation of a focus group for the PELS. The PELS is a management strategy for approximately 5,500 acres of endowment land within the City of McCall's area of impact over the next 20 years. Unless directed otherwise, the remainder of the endowment trust land in the Payette Lake Supervisory Area in Valley County will be managed through other policies and plans adopted by the Land Board, including the Forest Asset Management Plan, the Statement of Investment Policy, Strategic Reinvestment Plan, and the Asset Management Plan. Most of the 5,500 acres in the PELS will continue to have resources managed under these plans and policies while exploring other potential revenue-producing activities. The PELS provides an overarching guide to land management decisions within the area of impact as growth patterns influence the department's ability to implement traditional land management and take advantage of opportunities for higher revenue generation. The PELS examines specific strategies for lands over differing time periods to transition lands to higher and better uses where land values are significantly higher than our traditional asset classifications and associated incomes, or where management is impaired by surrounding urbanized uses. It is important to recognize that the PELS is intended to be an adaptive strategy that will be reviewed and updated as community development, land use patterns, and market trends develop over time. The PELS will be evaluated and altered for alignment and continuity with Land Board direction as necessary, like the other policies and plans that guide land management decisions mentioned previously. Since December, the department has updated the PELS based on technical feedback from the City of McCall. These changes and a history of the parcels within the area of impact are included in Attachment 1. Since the inception of the PELS focus group, through the meetings discussing the plans, the department utilized a web page that focused on the PELS, including providing the PELS document, PELS presentation from the December board meeting, an opportunity to comment, links to the focus group meetings, agendas, and other department information. Examples of these are provided in Attachment 2. During this time, the department hosted three-hour focus group meetings consisting of department staff, land board staff, and a broad spectrum of interest from the McCall area. Attachment 3 provides the full details regarding these meetings and the participants. In addition to the PELS focus group meetings, the department received over 600 comments from the public. All comments are included as Attachment 4. The following statements summarize many of the comments received. There was a general appreciation of opening the process and plan up for public involvement. The land board should slow down and not rush the process. Advisory groups should be assembled to review applications and plans specific to each parcel. Explore new asset classes that include conservation and recreation. Explore recreation opportunities. Extend the moratorium. Consider conservation easements. Consider other strategies beyond disposal. Consider the environmental impact of disposal. Do not just focus on the cash yield, but also look at appreciation and coordinate with citizens and the community regarding adequate time for development of a community strategy that meets the constitutional obligations. The department received comments from the Payette Lakes Recreational Water and Sewer District, Valley County, and the City of McCall. The Water and Sewer District wanted density and capacity limits considered in the PELs. Valley County emphasized slowing down the process, allowing time to investigate conservation easements, shifted thinking to recreation instead of economics, and granting access easements across endowment lands that are disposed. The City of McCall wanted consideration for drinking water, prioritizing the state 80 for entry to mid-level priced housing, use of conservation easements to protect sensitive parcels, and continuing to provide stakeholder engagement throughout the process. The city also provided technical comments regarding some of the parcels identified in the PELs, which were incorporated into our document. For next steps, due to the lease moratorium in the McCall area since June of 2020, the department has received applications for lands within the PELs. Applicants have been notified that these will not be reviewed until the land board approves the PELs and lifts the leasing suspension. We expect that there will be more applications submitted once the PELs is approved. Time will be required to allow for new or conflicting applications to be submitted. Approving the PELs and providing for an application period will allow for the department to work with legal counsel regarding any questions that come with applications. The application period would be of a sufficient length to allow for application preparation, but limited to avoid a situation where the department's processing is delayed due to serial application submissions. The department will continue to review and accept applications after the initial application period. However, there is a potential for a rush of applications once this issue is resolved. The department will work with the land board and land board staff to address these issues, such as cost allocation to applicants and other related application matters according to the following timeline. From today, hopefully with land board approval of the PELs through June 30th, the department will work with the Office of Attorney General and land board staff to establish application evaluation criteria and to procure third-party experts to assist in application evaluations. Therefore, the department's recommendations are: 1, the land board approve the Payette endowment land strategy as provided herein. 2, the land board direct the department to lift the existing restriction on certain leasing and disposition activities in the vicinity of McCall as directed at the June 16th, 2020 land board meeting. 3, the land board direct the department to begin accepting applications for lease, easement, land exchange, and disposition of lands in the McCall area of impact. And 4, begin the process to vet applications, including the Trident proposal, immediately, including hiring third-party experts and negotiating for their payment with applicants as needed to assist in the evaluation and/or recommendation of applications. Thank you. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions? Well, stand by. We'll probably have some. With that, Director, I guess we should go through public testimony. Is that correct?
Yes, Governor.
Okay, we have 17 individuals signed up for 2 minutes apiece. I guess Renee's my traffic cop. And we will start with Craig Utter from the Payette Land Trust. Craig, wherever you are.
Governor, real quick, I tried getting a message to you recently. Craig got stuck behind a rock slide as a result of the blasting. I believe it's Smith's Ferry headed down from McCall. So he routed around through New Meadows and I believe is in Napa. So if he could go later in the...
We will do that.
Appreciate it.
Bob Looper from Brundage. Bob.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Very good. My name is Robert Looper, representing the Pilgard Grove homeowners and Brundage Mountain. I know you guys have received hundreds of pages of comments on the Pels. The following is my 2-minute suggestion on how the IDL should proceed. 1, the IDL should expand the scope of the Pels to include the surrounding acreage, which impacts the watershed of Payette. The water quality of Payette Lake rests within the hands of the state of Idaho, whether that be the IDL or other state agencies. Like the endowment lands, Payette Lake represents a sacred trust for all Idahoans. Why only 5,500 acres? If the bar for determining the scope of the Pels was based on those lands that were, quote, transition endowment lands to higher and better uses where land values are significantly higher than traditional asset classifications, end quote, then the land board missed the mark when it only looked at the 5,500 acres in the McCall impact zone. The timberland designation / use of the remaining property surrounding Payette Lake significantly underestimates the value of the property and should have been included in the Pels scope. Number 2, the IDL should keep the focus group or an advisory committee of local stakeholders in place as the IDL staff incorporates comments and updates to the expanded Pels scope, including the redesignation of timberline asset class to incorporate recreation and conservation easements. This will take some time as the IDL has never evaluated non-exclusive easements over these properties. This endowment land has been there for 100 years. There's no one that should feel rest to complete the process. The land is appreciated substantially above the bulk of the IDL endowment lands due to its proximity to Payette Lake. No long-term value will be lost by taking the necessary time to complete a fully scoped Pels. 3, while the IDL staff is updating the Pels, the IDL should remove the moratorium on certain properties and direct staff to complete transactions on properties such as the Dinehart 80 acres and other similar tracts that can bring substantial value to McCall community and the IDL. The disposition of these lands must be done carefully and within the land planning goals and objectives of the city of McCall, Valley County, and will require a substantial commitment of staff and time for third-party experts. In conclusion, if so many people want this property, then your best scenario is to hold on to everything you can for as long as you can.
Thank you, Robert. Amy Rush from the Payette Endowment Lands Alliance. Amy?
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Amy Rush, and I'm speaking today on behalf of PELA, the Payette Endowment Lands Alliance. PELA acknowledges the need of a guiding document like the PELS, but approving the PELS as it stands today would be premature. The Land Board has the constitutional discretion to protect lands, not just a directive to sell or lease. Preservation of the McCall and area endowment lands should be the PEL's primary focus, given the nature of the McCall area endowment lands, the protection they provide for Payette Lake and the watershed, and their intrinsic value to the people of the state of Idaho. The December draft of the PELS is a benefit analysis of selling, leasing, or trading endowment lands in the McCall area. It does not evaluate the costs of these transactions. The PELS doesn't even mention, let alone prioritize, the health of the ecosystem or the protection of Payette Lake. A more comprehensive analysis would provide a more accurate report of how particular transactions would affect long-term returns. For example, what would be the cost to the ecology of McCall, the health of Payette Lake, or the economy of McCall if the state were to sell parcels G and H on the east side of the lake? Payette Lake, as you, Governor Little, pointed out at the North Fork Payette Watershed Summit, is at the top of the ditch. Damage to the lake would adversely affect McCall, the surrounding areas, peoples miles downstream who use these waters for municipal drinking water, agricultural operations, and recreation. The decisions that the Land Board will make on the McCall area endowment lands will have enormous impacts, and moving quickly would be short-sighted. We urge the Land Board to extend the moratorium on any sales or trades of endowment land for 2 years, work with the city of McCall and Valley County, and get these questions right. Once they're taken, they cannot be undone. In closing, please take a step back. In order to engage with moral, spiritual, and intellectual integrity with these lands, we need a fundamental value shift. It's our deepest value and desire that the Land Board and the IDL begin to acknowledge and honor the value of ecological processes, undeveloped lands, and natural ecosystems. The people and the land of our state deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Dave Bingaman with Valley County and the Central Idaho Mountain Bike Association. Dave?
Good morning, Mr. Governor and members of the Land Board. Valley County would like to commend IDL and the Land Board for the creation of a focus group to engage local stakeholders in creating the final draft of the PELS. Now, as you and your fellow board members take up these deliberations on this subject, we ask for further consideration on the following points raised during the meetings, echoed in the public comments, and presented to you by unanimous consensus from the members of the focus group. Please consider allowing the focus group to continue as its function as an advisory group to your board and IDL, and slow down the current timeline adoption of the PELs. A more comprehensive plan that looks at the application of the creative solutions proposed during the focus group and includes the economic impacts of recreation to local communities should be included in the final draft of the PELs. During this time, investigate how outside groups could utilize conservation easements, recreation, and traditional leases to augment income on public lands. These strategies will allow IDL to continue to manage local forests. Disposition and development do not. Valley County would like the time to explore some of these options, but this won't happen overnight. It will have to be fully vetted through our annual budget process, by passing potential levies, and by researching grant opportunities like the recently reinstated Land and Water Conservation Fund. Please explore ways for IDL to evolve as local economies statewide shift from resource dependent to recreation dependent. Thus far, recreation has been considered only a secondary benefit on endowment lands. Allow IDL staff the opportunity to diversify their management to adapt to new challenges and growing demand for outdoor recreational opportunities. Please include in accessing easements on properties that do end up in disposition. When properties are deemed appropriate for disposition, require that historical access to and through these lands remains. We've already lost too much land access to privatization across the state. We believe that by allowing ample time for these items to be included in the PELs and by working together with Valley County, the City of McCall, and other key stakeholders in the area, IDL can utilize these innovative approaches to land management to help preserve the character of the area and our ability to access the open spaces while maintaining its financial duties to the endowment and providing a comprehensive framework for managing endowment lands across the state. I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Julie Manning.
Good morning. I'm Julie Manning. Today I am here representing the 14 community stakeholders who participated in the focus group convened by IDL to provide input on the draft Pay Endowment Land Strategy. We thank IDL for seeking our input, and in further support of our responsibilities as members of this focus group, we delivered a written consensus statement yesterday, which I will summarize now. In support of IDL, we offer the following 3 recommendations. First, whereas these endowment lands contribute to long-term returns of the overall trust through appreciation, we recommend that IDL develop new protocols to incorporate and consider this appreciation and identify opportunities to increase revenue in ways that protect the lands in Payette Lake, including protocols for conservation easements, recreation leases, and recreation districts. Second, we support IDL taking time to further develop the PELs by considering and incorporating comments, focus group discussions, and other input, along with the existing comprehensive plan by the City of McCall and Valley County. While this work is being done, we recommend maintaining the moratorium on disposal of lands within the McCall area of impact until the PELs is finalized. Finally, we recommend continued commitment to working with stakeholders, including the City of McCall and Valley County, through final draft development and implementation of the PELs. Should IDL desire additional support or involvement of the focus group, we stand ready to offer our assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Sinclair, Bridgewater Homeowners Association. Kristen? I think you're on mute. Well, why don't we go to Olivia Bingham, and we'll come back to Kristen here in a minute. Olivia?
Hi guys, thank you so much for taking the time to let me speak today. My name's Olivia. I'm a senior in McCall. I was born and raised here. I plan on specializing in environmental law in college, so this is really opening my eyes to that field. I've been using the endowment lands to bike, climb, ski, swim, you name it, since I can remember. And I think I can speak for my entire generation of kids growing up here when I say it's really a special area because of the recreational value that we all appreciate in it after growing up here. I've been working with the Central Idaho Mountain Biking Association to reroute a popular section of trail on IDL lands, and it's really helped me connect with my community. It's also helped me better understand how recreation on those lands has played a pretty integral part in our economy in McCall. My mountain biking team and I have used IDL lands year after year as a great resource to train and ride in pristine forest lands. The most important part to me is the stretch of waterfront land on the east side of the lake. It's the only part of the lake left that's accessible and not blocked by private property. I realize that those lands are valuable for development and profit is the goal here, but there are ways to profit off of those lands and continue to maintain its original value. My biggest fear is to go off to college, and when I come back to visit, only see condos and private property in the forests and on the lake that I grew up on and appreciated so much. I know that you guys have gotten a lot of proposals and options to look through, but I really, really urge you not to rush this and take the time that McCall locals in my generation have grown to deserve. Thank you guys, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Nick Harris. I have Kristen. Oh, okay, Kristen. We'll go back to Kristen.
Governor, can you hear me?
Yep, hear you fine.
Great, thank you. Governor and members of the Land Board, my name is Kristen Hoff Sinclair. I'm a citizen of McCall, was a focus group panelist, and I'm representing Brightwater HOA. I applaud the IDL staff for its work on the PELs in such a short amount of time and for their efforts to include public input via the focus group session. There's a lot of good that's happened here and an opportunity for even more going forward. The greatest of these opportunities is to enable the preservation of these areas for our children and grandchildren. This will take time and work. The PELs plan is a good start. However, there are pieces missing. Number one, expansion of classifications beyond the current. This is suggested by many in the comments and could include such things as conservation, recreation, and watershed. The addition of these new asset classes would attract and expand options for revenue for the endowment lands. Number two, protocols or evaluation criteria. Although this is part of the IDL staff recommendation, it cannot be completed prior to the recommendation of vetting applications immediately. How will these be vetted without the new evaluation criteria? In the meantime, it is difficult to submit things like a conservation easement application when there is not a defined set of evaluation criteria. Number three, work with the city of McCall and Dinehart 80. This land could be an answer to affordable housing that is so critically needed. This is an issue for all visitors and citizens of the area. And number four, continue to engage a stakeholder group to work with the IDL staff to find creative solutions that enable a win-win while creating a successful model for use statewide. Let's all commit to the hard, challenging work and length of time that is needed to build on this work and create a strong, comprehensive plan. Though this may seem daunting in the short term, the value of putting it in the effort now will pay large benefits in the future for all of Idaho's endowment lands. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nick Harris.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we hear you great.
Okay, good. My name is Nick Harris. I have nearly 28 years of financial markets experience, and most of that was on Wall Street. I wanted to highlight that there are other solutions the IDL could pursue besides disposal. A strategy could be pursued to extract yield from the land through a quilted approach of conservation easements, recreation leases, timber harvest, etc., which are not exclusive. In addition, Idaho and Valley County receive a significant economic benefit from keeping the land public. Ostensibly, a portion of tax receipts could be paid to the trust to preserve the area. I wanted to present an example of how this could work. Trident is proposing a swap of some $32 million worth of timber for 20,000 acres surrounding McCall. Let's pretend that's a fair offer. Let's also assume that McCall land appreciates at 8% a year. If the IDL could achieve a 2% yield using a combination of the strategies outlined above, over 32 years, the state would earn a sum total of $113 million, or $32 million in today's money. And the trust would still own the land, which would be worth $457 million and yielding 2% a year. That's a much better deal than disposal. And for this exercise, I presume the Trident offer is fair, and it's $1,600 an acre for land in McCall with over 15,000 linear feet of lakefront property. This offer is a very small fraction of what represents a fair price. This is a complex problem, but there are other solutions besides disposal. Such solutions require creative, long-term thought, collaboration, and time. Idaho needs to slow this process down and explore other options. These lands are important engines of growth to the state and a precious resource. IDL has held these lands for 130 years. Let's at least take the time to find the right solution. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is Stanley Johnson.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Good morning. Welcome.
My name is Stanley Johnson. I'm a future beneficiary to the McCall Endowment lands. The lands surrounding Payette Lake have been adored for 100 years. Its vast areas are open to recreational enthusiasts and have been used by hunters, anglers, climbers, mountain bikers, and skiers alike. The swaths of land around the lake are instrumental to the feel of the town of McCall, and it is a crucial reason why many businesses stay open and tourists come to McCall. This in turn makes property values dependent on the McCall Endowment lands, but the area surrounding the lake and the lake's watershed will be destroyed if they were to ever be sold or traded. Therefore, I reject the Payette Endowment land strategy. Companies like Trident Holdings are for-profit developers. They threaten to litigate to force the land board to swap these lands for revenue-producing timberland. Trident fails to recognize the words protect and financial return by failing to recognize the strain such a large-scale development will put on the county and the city. One seasonal roads will now require the purchase of more snowplows and increased year-long maintenance, something that streets in already highly residential areas barely get. Over the past decade, Payette Lake has seen an increase in pollutants and algae blooms in the water. Through stringent mitigation, we have kept pollutants like phosphorus and nitrogen down. But with an increase of homes surrounding the north side of the lake, algae blooms will affect the city of McCall, farmers that rely on the Payette River, and livestock owners whose animals will drink the water with toxic amounts of algae and ultimately die. I respectfully ask the board to consider the residents of McCall, the state of Idaho, and our visitors who love to ski, bike, hunt, fish, and climb on the lands that Trident Holdings Alec Williams has proposed to trade for a short-term timber sale and then personally make millions selling off our land to wealthy investors forever. I ask the board to consider the future memories that will be made through the recreational activity, and I also ask the board to consider the long-term disastrous effects that this land swap will have. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig, I see you've arrived. You blasted through the landslide. We'll let you testify now.
Thank you, Governor, and members of the Land Board for this opportunity to speak. My name is Craig Utter. I'm with the Payette Land Trust. On Friday, March 12th, the Payette Land Trust submitted 2 applications for conservation easements on Parcel G and Parcel H, essentially East Side Drive. This submission was a direct result of Governor Little's request for out-of-the-box thinking on the McCall Endowment issues and for solutions which work statewide. It's also a result of PLT's involvement in the PELS process and participation in the focus group sessions which amassed a diverse set of stakeholders and generated ideas which brought consensus from the group. PLT heard the governor's call for workable solutions loud and clear. We submitted the applications in a direct response to the request for proposals to increase the long-term revenue on these lands while conserving traditional uses, natural habitat, access, and water quality. The applications were not submitted in haste, but rather the result from years of work on this issue. We began investigating a path to conservation around Payette Lake in 2018, eventually making the Payette Lake Conservation Project the centerpiece of our Payette River Basin Initiative. In 2020, the discussion surrounding the Land Board's fiduciary duty in relation to traditional uses elevated due to development values that continue to rival those of timber. Born in 1993 out of the need to balance conservation and development, PLT now wants to bring its 28 years of experience of weaving together agriculture, timber, and recreation into conservation easements as a tool to help manage endowment lands. By purchasing an easement at fair market value, the fiduciary duty of the land board will be met. The endowment will continue to own the land and benefit from any future derived revenue on these properties under the easement. Purchasing a conservation easement on endowment land has never been done before. Given time to establish the necessary protocols, IDL and PLT could successfully create a tool resulting in a win for the land board, a win for the community, and most importantly, a win for the lake and the land. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. How's council? Next is burn value. Burn? We got him, Renee?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bryn Value. I am 17. I go to McCall Donnelly High School, and I've lived in Valley County my whole life. I can't count the number of times I've been out to Little Lake and hiked or camped, gone to the thinking spot and rock climbed, or just enjoyed the scenery. Biked Payette Lake Trail with my mom, or jumped off the cliffs into Payette Lake with my friends. All of these spots I frequently go to after school in the spring or on a fun summer day are in the 5,478 acres of endowment land. This land goes to the endowment beneficiaries, and I am one of those. I opposed selling or trading the endowment lands, and I believe the Payette endowment land strategy focuses too much on financial gain and not enough on long-term effects. If the endowment land is traded for development, Idaho will gain logging land and with that funding for schools. This profit will help Idaho in short term, but development of McCall around Payette Lake could possibly cost Idaho more money. Development will remove the buffer from the watershed, causing Payette Lake's water quality to degrade and creating a public health issue. Payette Lake is the sole water source for the city of McCall, and if the water source is polluted, then there will be a significant cost to find a new source. More funding for schools won't be beneficial if the wildlife and nature surrounding Payette Lake and Payette Lake itself are degraded and lessened. When I come back to McCall with my children, I want them to see Little Lake, the thinking spot, and the cliffs in their full natural beauty. I want them to swim in a clean Payette Lake, and I want them to safely drink water from the sink. For these reasons, I oppose the Payette endowment land strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anika Gramblett, excuse me.
All right, good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. My name is Annika Cramblett, and I'm a junior from McCall Donnelly High School. I've lived in McCall my entire life and try to spend as much time outside as possible. One of my favorite adventures was this winter when a few of my friends and I went cross-country skiing. We skied out just before sunset, climbed up to the thinking spot, lit a small fire, and gazed off into the atmosphere. The stars were transcendent, and a wave of appreciation for this hidden gem state I get to call home washed over me. With that feeling in mind, I'll push for slower, more considerate development of our land for as long as possible. Some of my concerns for the Payette endowment land strategy involve the ecological capacities of the land due to how quickly this plan is being pushed through. The environment should be the foundation of the endowment land plan. Environmental degradation will take place if this plan passes too quickly and if it does not address the environment's priceless assets. Underdeveloped land is encroached upon daily, and without a sturdy plan to protect it, nature will soon wither away. When driving through McCall, there are many deer inhabiting the space with us. They're mangled, depressed, and confused. Rapid development will continue to harm their way of life, and wildlife deserve to freely use the land as well. Solidifying a more comprehensive plan will immensely aid the ecosystems and wildlife in McCall, Idaho. A local stakeholder advisory group, which will include representatives from the Forest Service, Payette Water Quality Control, the City of McCall, and Valley County youth, who must be involved in this issue. Other advisors would likely be necessary. However, the youth must have a voice on this issue because we will reap the consequences of the endowment land plan, good or bad. Poorly planned development will ruin the lake and its surrounding environment. And with that, the memories of these beautiful untouched places will lose the genuine feeling they once had. I want more funding for my school and for McCall to continue developing, but not when it's rushed and not when it's at the cost of losing these sanctuaries. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sailor Van Middendorp. Saylor, do you have us on mute? Well, we'll come back to Saylor. Patrick Zach.
Hello, my name is Patrick Zach, and my wife and I have lived here in McCall since 1990. I own a small business here since 1997, and we raised our family here. We place a high value on the freedom and open access to public lands around McCall. I feel that freedom defines Idaho. For as long as we've lived in McCall, we've enjoyed the endowment lands and access to the public lands beyond them and the Forest Service. We've enjoyed hiking, mountain biking, ATV riding, skiing, and hunting. We are not alone, as thousands of others enjoy the same access to the land, and I see that every year. More and more people are riding their motorcycles, riding their ATVs, hiking and biking, and I feel as though loss of this land would be detrimental to all of Idaho. I'd hate to see the privatization of the land lead to development of the land and loss of access, as well as possible degradation of the Payette Lake water quality. Therefore, I oppose any transfer or sales of the land. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Saylor there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I got it figured out.
Okay, Saylor.
All right. Yeah, so hi everyone. My name's Saylor Van Mindorp. Thank you guys so much for letting me speak. I'm a current junior at McCall-Dunley High School. My family's been in the Valley County area for over 4 generations, and lately I've been poring over your guys' proposition. And while I really respect that you guys are trying to work with the land, I have some big concerns about it. Chiefly the consequences that would come with dividing up the land. Because of my family's longevity here, we've been able to make so many amazing memories, specifically on these endowment lands. My first ever rock climb was at the Thinking Spot, which is a popular climbing area on the endowment lands. My mom and I were adventuring just before sunset, and I got to the top of the route. I could feel the sun on my face and the ground under my fingers. It was an addicting feeling, and now I'm an avid climber. Being that there isn't many climbing spots in the area, I'm a regular to the Thinking Spot. Selling or leasing any of this land wouldn't just affect my lifestyle, but also the life of the land. This proposal would sell transitional lands. When one transitional parcel is sold, the next door piece becomes transitional as well, eventually leading to the sale of all the endowment lands. Having this patchwork of land could have disastrous consequences. The sold land would be inevitably developed and thus compromising its effectiveness as a refuge for biodiversity, a watershed buffer, and even as a carbon sink. If these things were put into jeopardy, it would lead to a very unhealthy ecosystem. So as I said earlier, I appreciate your intentions and time put into this proposal, but I know that it needs more time to make sure the area is preserved. We really need to protect the integrity of the land on which we live. I implore you guys to think about what the sale of this land would mean, not just for us or the ecosystem, but also for future generations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saylor. Camus Alexander.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Camus Alexander, and I attend McCall-Donnelly High School as a junior. Growing up in McCall, I've always been attracted to the outdoors. My family and I would always go on adventures, whether that be skiing, hiking, or mountain biking. We have explored many of the areas that surround McCall. As I have most recently learned, many of these areas are endowment lands. As an outdoor recreationist and environmentalist, is it important to me that these lands and the surrounding ecosystems are preserved for my generation and for generations to come. These lands, along with good public schools, are necessary for the long-term benefit of the local community. In Article 9, Section 8 of the Idaho State Constitution, it requires that endowment lands be managed to maximize long-term monetary gains, largely to support public schools and other beneficiaries. However, this policy focuses only on economic returns and is not fully aligned with the demands of the public or the needs of the environment. Solutions have been found to this problem, such as in Colorado, where the state constitution was amended to not only consider the financial aspect of the endowment lands, but also wildlife habitat, the beauty of the land, and other natural values. A large portion of the financial returns demanded of endowment lands are meant to support public schools, However, their contributions aren't enough. For example, in 2020, the public school system received around $52.5 million, which only accounted for a mere 2.5% of what the state of Idaho spends annually on schools. If the goal of farming residential developments on the small area of the Payette endowment lands is to provide more long-term funding for public schools, then more effective sources of funding should be found, such as passing annual levies or increasing the cost of state parks and rec passes. This would prevent the sale of these precious lands to private investors that aren't in the best interests of the general public. Take these points into consideration when reviewing the case of the Payette endowment lands. Whatever the final decision may be, it will affect the lives of many generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kay Hummel. Kay, welcome.
Thank you, Governor Little and the board. Can you hear me live?
Yep, hear you fine.
Thank you again so much. I'm a resident of Boise, so I'm not your standard McCall person, perhaps, commenting on this, although my family has a long history around Payette Lake, starting with my late father being a Boy Scout on the east side in the 1930s. I'd like to stress that the future appreciation of Pell's tracts definitely should guide your processes and decision-making now and in the future, along with new protocols suggested by many. I'm also going to emphasize something I wrote you in my March 1 comment, that Article 9, Section 8 of our Constitution states that your board has the duty, quote, to provide for the location, protection, sale, or rental of these lands, unquote. I'd like to emphasize the or in that statement and the statutory construction there. It means that our Constitution does not mandate that you must sell, trade, lease any part of the endowment lands at any given time or on any specific timetable. I hope we can all reflect on that as you go forward and remember that protection is one of your alternatives here. And in that same vein, I raised in my comments the idea of outstanding natural resource lands as a classification. And your staff emphasized that you got a lot of comment on strategies just beyond mere disposal of these tracts. Outstanding natural resource land should be a classification you can consider for these special lands, particularly tracts G, H, and the 2 islands. And I encourage you to look at that and consider the future value of those lands now and on into the future. There are many strategies for you to adopt now. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, Kay. By coincidence, we now have Jeff Faraday. Jeff?
Thank you, Governor and members of the board. My name is Jeff Faraday. I live in Boise, but also am a landowner in Valley County and have been a lifelong visitor to the McCall area. I agree with essentially everything that's been said this morning. I just want to emphasize a few points. First of all, these lands that the strategy evaluates are not, in my view, underperforming lands. In fact, they're performing magnificently for the local community, for the economics of the area, and for the people of Idaho, just in terms of the values that they provide that have been amply discussed this morning. Some parcels of state land need to be retained, especially if they're delivering such values. The lake shores and the islands are really good examples of that. The mountain front that is McCall's iconic view shed is another example. So I really encourage you to explore other alternatives for both raising funds and for protecting these iconic lands, such as conservation easements, as has been discussed, and other ideas. And certainly to take your time in this matter. The board's discretion is broad and does not require it to act on any particular leasing or exchange proposal, or to make any particular decision as to any particular parcel. You are not under any compulsion to sell, exchange, or lease. And I ask that you look at these broader values as you go forward. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jeff. And finally, Garrett Visser. Garrett?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, and thank you, Land Board, for the opportunity to comment on the pending approval of the PELs. My name is Garrett Visser. I represent the Idaho Wildlife Federation, Idaho's oldest and largest coalition of hunting and fishing organizations, collectively representing 28 affiliate organizations and 45,000 members and supporters. We want to first acknowledge and thank both the department and the Land Board for all their efforts on this issue. IWF participated in the PEL's draft comment period. We also listened in on all the focus group meetings and know the time and care that's gone into this process. We agree with much of what's already been said today, so I'll try to be very brief to reiterate our points. We support IDL taking more time to develop the PELs. With the focus group meetings, substantial public engagement, and the overall publicity given to this issue over the past year, we believe it is consistent and appropriate to continue refining the document to best capture these thoughts. We also urge the exploration of new asset classes on the appropriate parcels. We continue to encourage the inclusion of conservation easement options and the potential for these new asset classes, including conservation, recreational, or water quality classifications. Without exploring these options, we may be leaving money on the table. Let's take the time to develop that appropriate protocols for those new asset classes if that occurs. And finally, we agree with many that the Land Board should extend the moratorium on these sales, leases, and exchanges until the PELs is refined. It's apparent with this plan, as well as separate proposals that encompass endowment lands within the area of impact, has pushed discussions over the future of endowment lands in the forefront. The adoption of this plan may set the stage for the future of all 2.5 million acres of endowment lands, from timberland in Bonner County to those overlooked the famed steelhead runs on Clearwater River in Orfino to the desert lands of Owyhee County. We need the PELs to be a properly developed model, not only for this, but all Idaho community. IWF stands at the ready to help continue to refine this PELs. Thank you.
Thank you. To all the people that testified, first off, thank you for staying on time, but thank you for the enlightenment. It's helpful for the board, and you are all respectful of the process. Obviously, you've been participating, and I know I speak for the whole board that we appreciate your participation. Jim, you're up.
Yes, sir. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions. One of the questions we had, doesn't the department have some conservation easements right now?
Not directly on endowment land that I'm aware of, but we do, through the Forest Legacy Program, participate in helping with conservation.
That's a different, creature of a different.
And actually, that's wrong. There is one over in Eastern with the, is it at the Bruno?
Or Curlew.
Yeah.
Do you know, Director?
I don't know off the top of my head, sorry.
Well, the question is, and we had some of the very most profound testimony was about conservation easements. I mean, we've got an obligation to maximize return, and maybe the department and our sage legal counsel can look at that, because that was a common, we've got a job to maximize income, but that doesn't mean we can't explore that, so.
Yes, sir, Mr. Governor, members of the board. That's the beauty of this plan, is it provides the discretion for you guys to make decisions. It doesn't preclude any proposals coming across.
And I want to add, Director and Jim and Scott, obviously what you've done, the PELs process up there, the natives aren't quite as hostile as they were before, but they're still a little hostile.
Governor.
Yes, Superintendent.
Just for a comment, please.
I just want to thank the high school students that testified this morning. And made comments. I just want to tell them that I'm impressed with them participating in the process, and just want to give them a shout out. I thought that was fantastic.
Governor, a couple of questions.
Controller.
Thank you, Jim. And I too want to thank all those who testified today, and then all those who helped. First of all, to the department for taking the time. I know it was a lot of effort and work of all of you to help coordinate those focus group meetings. And we appreciate the engagement from all those who participated and those that were sub-participants of that. So I thank you. On item number 2 on the recommendation, it says to direct the department to lift existing restrictions on certain leasing and disposition activities.
Yes, sir.
Maybe if you could go into explaining a little bit further, what certain ones are we talking about, or what's the reasoning behind that language?
Jim.
Yes, sir. Director, Mr. Controller. So we currently are allowed to continue with our traditional leasing, which we look at as grazing, ag, and also we, of course, timber sale activities. So we're talking more of, let's go ahead and start exploring other things like commercial, residential, conservation easements or leases, those kinds of things. Then that all stems back, I believe, to the June land board when we kind of put a halt to all of those activities.
I guess follow up, Governor. Thank you. I guess, and some of the comments and the feedback was lift the moratorium on some, keep it on others. I guess what's the department's feel and direction on lifting the moratorium then?
Mr. Ellen.
Mr. Governor and Mr. Controller, I think we need to lift it in order to see what's out there for opportunities to explore across the board. And that's going to be the challenge, which is why we'll need the time frame to bring in expertise. If it's land management activities, the department's strong there, but actually being able to compare the financial benefits of the plethora of opportunities we have in front of us, that's where we'll need some help, and to put the guidelines in place as to how we evaluate those to give you guys the best options.
Great, thank you. Governor, for another question.
Yes, Controller Wolf.
Thanks, Governor. Mr. Elbin, that kind of point that you just alluded to there is some third-party experts. Maybe if you could talk to that point a little bit. What's the process or thoughts on that, and helping evaluate the proposals as they come in, particular the conservation easements, because that is something new. We don't have that framework in building and developing that. If you could speak to that then.
Mr. Governor, Mr. Controller, the intent would be to get some, we already have some financial advisors and other people that are currently under contract with us, but even looking out beyond that, I can't get in specifics unless we have a permanent example. But even in the case of conservation easements, it would be working with the Attorney General's office and other counsel to figure out what are we willing to accept in those? How restrictive would the conservation easement be? And I guess as a land manager, my bias would be, can we have that in place and still meet other management objectives of the land to continue to conserve and manage the resources that we have, as well as have this beneficial conservation easement that's bringing in the additional income we may need.
Great. Governor, one last.
Yes,
may
sure.
Please, and thanks for the board for the opportunity. I guess any other final thoughts or comments of what was shared again today from many of the participants and stakeholders in the focus group? I guess your final thoughts on some of their feedback and how this applies to the Pels and going forward. And I guess along the lines of slowing down, or those high-level comments that you listed are some of the general, I don't know, there's maybe 9 or 10 different items that are common observations that were in the written comments and from the focus group. I guess if you could speak towards some of those.
Mr. Governor, Mr. Controller, I guess the big takeaway for me from this is, how do we do a better job of letting people know that there's an opportunity to come do business with us, and to do so in a timely fashion? That's a lot of the information that I think we took from it. We've historically done certain things very well as an agency, and now we have some new opportunities in front of us that we need to make sure we get right.
Okay, thank you.
Governor.
Director.
Oh, thank you, Governor. And just to add to that, I mean, I will say that while the management of some of these transition lands around the lake has presented us some challenges, it's also an opportunity, expanding upon what Jim said, is we are open for business. Let's look at some opportunities here to where, we can close that financial gap, especially on those acres around the lake where we're not hitting the mark, and look at some opportunities to where we could do that, get creative, and raise the bar for our endowment beneficiaries. So, like I said, challenging, but there are opportunities here, and we want to get this right. And I do commend staff at the Department of Lands for all the work that they've done, building out the strategy, putting the focus group together, and really sitting down with community and community leaders to have some good constructive dialogue about what endowment lands are, how we do differ from the Forest Service, but how we do want to get this right and make sure that the endowment beneficiaries win. So, thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? I guess one of the questions I have is some kind of a time frame, and I think you were pretty candid about the fact that if you're a purchaser of timber, a grazing lease, even a cabin site, we've got a process built out. If we go to a different use, and we had the discussion that we don't have a lot of conservation easements, what kind of time frame and so that all the parties, as you eloquently described it, what kind of time frame do you think we're going to need?
Mr. Governor, members of the Land Board, the internal discussion on that is we're thinking another 6 months. So, we've had a year. It's not that we haven't been sitting idle. We know some of the ideas that are coming in. We're looking at that. So an idea we threw around was the end of September would be like the application period, and then some meaningful time after that to evaluate it. Obviously, it's going to depend on how many applications we get for the lands.
Well, I guess the other question is when you say applications, we've got standard applications for the purchase of timber and a grazing lease, even a cabin site. We don't have standard language for a conservation easement.
That is correct, sir.
So
we have some framework in place. That's going to be a big piece of it, is obviously working with the applicants on making sure we're there with that language.
And of course, obviously the people around McCall, including myself, all have a vested interest. But, we need to think of it not exclusively to McCall, but exclusive to our entire 2.5 million acre portfolio, including some ground about a mile from here, maybe a mile and a half. But the issue is, when we do this, it needs to be, as we do with everything else, it needs to be transferable to other parts of the portfolio. And do you think you can get that done by September?
Mr. Governor, members of the board, I believe we can.
Okay.
One last question, Governor. I guess, thanks, Jim, and maybe your thoughts on this and where the department and director and others is in evaluating if it is new asset classes and evaluating all areas. Do we feel that we have a good process or plan in place that we can determine if the PELS is the right thing, and using that to help determine what's the highest and best use of these lands?
Mr. Governor, Mr. Controller, I believe we do, but it is going to take some time because there's varied options here. There's disposition, which, we heard a lot of opposition to that, but we believe it needs to stay on the table. There's other stacked leases on top of our traditional activities and new things that we'll have to look at. And that's what we want to be able to do, is bring that forward to the best of our ability and provide a recommendation that gives you guys the option to make a decision. The other thing is, we do have neighboring states that are a little ahead of us on this, and I'm not opposed to looking at what they've done and stealing some ideas from them as well.
Thank you.
Further questions? Recommendations? Action?
Governor.
General.
First of all, I didn't want folks to get the notion that I'm just being casual about this. For health reasons, I cannot sit upright, and so I am in a recliner. I just wanted you to know that. But I move that we adopt the department and approve the department recommendation as it is outlined on page 3 of 4 in the book. I will read that. The department recommends the Land Board 1, approve the Payette endowment land strategy as provided herein. 2, direct the department to lift the existing restrictions on certain leasing and disposition activities in the vicinity of McCall as directed at the June 16, 2020 Land Board meeting. 3, Direct the department to begin accepting applications for lease, easement, land exchange, and disposition of lands in the McCall area of impact. 4, direct the department to begin the process of vetting applications immediately, including the Trident proposal, and hiring third-party experts and negotiating for their payment with applicants as needed to assist in the evaluation and or recommendation of applications.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, and that matches up with what the regular agenda item recommendation is. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay? The ayes have it. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Governor, ready for the final agenda item?
I am.
All right, Governor, Land Board members, the last item on the regular agenda is related to House Bill 118, which concerns legal representation for the Department of Lands. This is found at tab 7 in your binders. By way of background, in 1979, the Idaho Board of Land Commissioners endorsed a policy that instructed the Department of Lands to support or oppose any legislation at the direction of the board. That policy can be found at attachment 1 in your binder. After discussions with Land Board staff, it was determined to bring this to the Land Board for today's meeting. House Bill 118, found at attachment 2, which is currently being debated in the Idaho legislature, amends Idaho Code 58-120 to prohibit the Department of Lands from using legal representation provided by the Idaho Office of the Attorney General. The department currently relies on 3 Deputy Attorneys General, or DAGs, as well as assistance from other specialized attorneys within the Attorney General's office. Roughly 52% of the billable hours for legal services supports the agency's endowment programs, while 48% supports the agency's dedicated and general fund programs, such as public trust, minerals regulatory, or oil and gas, and fire programs. As you know, the department pays for legal services through the statewide cost allocation plan, much like other state agencies do. The department has remained relatively constant in the hours of legal services used over the past decade, ranging between 6,500 hours and 8,000 hours annually. The department has used approximately 7,300 hours of DAG time on average over the past 8 years at an average rate of $55 per hour. On average, our total cost for legal services is approximately $405,000 per year. If House Bill 118 becomes law, the department estimates that contracting outside legal services, hiring attorneys to work internally, or a combination thereof could cost the agency and the endowments more than $1.8 million annually. Governor, the recommendation is for the Land Board to provide the department with direction regarding House Bill 118. I will stand for questions and turn it over to the board for discussion.
Questions?
Well, Governor.
Controller Wolf.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Director Miller, for the background. I guess I'd like to share a few thoughts about this bill. I oppose this bill for a couple of reasons. I do not agree with the last line in the bill. I believe that the 5 of us as Land Board members have the right and authority to decide who we would like to provide legal counsel for our board and the department. Since 1905, Idaho Code 58-120 has included this language that as a Land Board, we can determine who our legal counsel shall be. If we do not agree with the current counsel, the existing law provides that we have the authority to request a second or third opinion. Where appropriate, as board members, we need to exercise that authority. Additionally, I turn to my own internal legal counsel and Land Board staff member often for his independent thought and counsel on many board actions. This bill has also been a good exercise to step back and evaluate. If there's a perception out there, then we have an opportunity to evaluate and look for areas to correct, adjust, and improve. I believe as board members, Land Board staff, and department staff can continue to look for areas of improvement and share those suggestions that may help going forward. At every point, our teams need to collaborate with each other and stakeholders to make sure all points are clear. Last, the business and financial side of this bill causes me to pause. The director shared some of the potential financial impacts of this bill. As a land board, we all know one of our key fiduciary duties is to secure the maximum long-term return. And in my opinion, I believe this would go the opposite direction if we had to find other outside counsel. To put that in context, that cost in context, the potential increase to the endowments could be equal to the same amount of net income we receive annually from the grazing program. I just want to thank the other fellow board members for allowing me to share my thoughts about this bill. And when the time is appropriate, I am prepared to make a motion, but I'm interested in hearing our other discussion first.
Further discussion?
Governor.
Secretary Denny.
Thank you, Governor. And I have to agree with Controller Wolf that the vast majority of the legal advice that we need is certainly not any controversial or in conflict in any way. And I think that we do have the authority when there is a conflict to hire outside counsel. So I think I would agree with Controller Wolf that we should direct the department to oppose this bill.
Further discussion? Hearing none.
Governor, for a motion, I move that the Land Board oppose the passage of House Bill 118. In order to communicate this motion instructs the Director of the Idaho Department of Lands to appear before the relevant committee of our legislature considering the passage of House Bill 118 and testify on behalf of the board in opposition to House Bill 118, incorporating the following points. First, House Bill 118 will infringe upon the board's discretion as trustee to retain the most cost-effective and qualified services necessary for fulfillment of its constitutional and fiduciary duties. And number two, House Bill 118 will increase the legal costs to the State Board of Land Commissioners substantially, which has the direct effect of taking money away from the endowment beneficiaries, invading the discretion of the board in the exercise of its fiduciary duties.
I would second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? I would inform the board, just like I do on our budget bills, that I've got another hat that I wear occasionally, like signing bills. And so I will not be taking a position on this piece of legislation, or this recommendation to the staff. So, further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Governor, I
General?
abstain.
Okay. Opposed,
Governor?
nays? No nays?
Governor, I'm going to abstain as well.
So the vote, then the vote is only 2-0. All right. Further action items?
Governor, no, that concludes the agenda.
All right. Thank you, Director. Thank you all very much. We are adjourned. Oh, I'm waiting for a motion.
Governor, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded, we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed,
Aye.
nay. We are adjourned.